What is up, my Lorcana goons? Welcome to the Lorcana Goons channel. My name is Kevin, and we're going to talk about some Lorcana stuff today. On today's episode of the Meta Review, I am joined by Zach Stone. How you doing, Zach?
I'm doing wonderful, Kevin. We got a lot of events that happened this past weekend, and I'm excited to talk about them. There was one that you played in, and the one that we played in. So yeah.
Yeah, even the weekend before that. So it's been about 2 weeks since we last did a meta review. And within that time frame, Zach and I both played a 1K in our area, and both of us got top 8. So that's kind of cool, right? And then the following weekend after, I entered the Thea Beastie free 1K tournament, which was 9 rounds of Swiss and like 280 some players. And I did pretty well. I ended up in 10th place, almost made that top 8 cut, but I just kind of dropped the ball. But we'll get into that and much more in this meta review video. But before we get into it, I do want to say, and Zach wants to say as well, like, comment, and subscribe if you yourself are a Lorcana goon and you like Lorcana content, because it helps support the channel. And as you can tell, we really are some Lorcana goons. We're really out there playing, trying to get these credentials for you guys so that you guys can actually take our words serious. We are giving our opinions on the metagame and how you should and shouldn't play Lorcana. So we want to put that to the test. We want to put our money where our mouth is, right, Zach Stone?
There's a lot more events to come with the official Lorcana circuit, due to be announced sometime in the quarter one. I know you and I are both excited for that as well. So yeah, we can get started with the first event. We have the Tier 1 Games 1K. That was the event that happened 2 weeks ago. There was so many Ruby Amber and Ruby Amethyst decks. It was kind of just like Ruby dominant. What would you say, Kevin?
Oh, heck yeah, dude. So this tournament was held in Temecula, California, in SoCal. It was 52 players, if I'm not mistaken. And me, Zach, and my cousin drove about an hour out to get to this 1K. And in general, aside from the decks that people were playing, the amount of people that were there was cool to see, because I haven't gone to like a bigger Lorcana event, I guess you could say, in last format or this format. So seeing people from like our locals, some of the locals in the Inland Empire, some locals from San Diego, everybody kind of coming to this one location to play Lorcana was really cool, man. It felt like a mini regionals. You know what I mean? So but in terms of what people were playing, yeah, Ruby Amber has been seeing a lot more of representation in real life Lorcana play, is what I've been seeing. The reason for that is it's really popular on Pixelborn now. Both Steadfast and Zephyr dropped videos about how to play Ruby Amber this format, so naturally a lot of people are gonna pick up on that and take the deck and see results with it. And I feel like I personally took time out of my day to prepare for both of these events. I played a lot of Pixelborn the week before our 1K, and then I played Pixelborn a lot that same week for the Thea Beastie 1K. And when I was playing the first week, one of the first things I noticed was immediately that a lot of people were playing the discard deck. A lot of people were playing Ruby Amber because they had seen that most recent Steadfast and Zephyr video talking about Ruby Amber Mufasa. So I already kind of had an idea of what to expect, and I know you did too, because you were kidding me up the day before and asking, do I play the discard deck? Do I play Ruby's Amber Steel Song? You know what I mean? But you ended up going with a different deck. Tell us about it, Zach. What made you decide to play the deck you played and whatnot?
I played the Flute Steel Song deck. I had a lot of unfortunate experiences with the discard strategies. I was trying out Emerald Ruby, Emerald Steel, and both times I played at locals, I felt like the deck had like too many weak points that could be easily targeted by. So the day before, Zephyr uploaded a video about the Gaston Flute deck, and already having some practice with that deck in the beginning, I immediately said that this is probably what I should be playing tomorrow, and I went through all my cards, and I had everything except the Gaston's foil, so I had to pull them out of the boxes of bulk and throw them together, and I made top 8. I lost round 4, starting off 3-0 before that, and after winning my 5th round, they allowed us to draw to guarantee my spot. And I lost out to a Ruby Amethyst player in the top 8. So overall, the deck was really good, and it was card for card the list that he uploaded. At least the list that was shared to him by the original creator of the deck. So I think it was a good deck, and it definitely performed well for me. A few of the cards I definitely changed now in hindsight, but overall the deck was really good.
Yeah, I like the list. We got it right here. Playing four of the following: Whole New World, Ariel, The Beast, Cinderella, Ballroom Sensation, Let the Storm Rage On, Grab Your Swords, Gaston. Now, this is the 3-cost Amber Gaston. If you don't know what it does, it lets you sing for 5, basically. So it's a singer 5 like Ariel without being able to search. Then we got 4 Simba, Sleepy's Flute, Strength of a Raging Goon, Tiana, and then that's going to be all for 4 ofs. Then you got 2 of the following: Prince Eric, Cindy Stouthearted, Rapunzel. And then we have 2 Surfer Stitch, 2 World's Greatest Criminal Mind, and 2 Robin Hood. And then we have 3 of the following: Tinker Bell. And that's going to be all for the 3 of us, right? Is what I'm looking at. And only 1 Benja. Mr. Zach Stone playing 1 Benja. I hate 1 ofs in Lorcana. I am very disappointed in you. I honestly think if you would have played maybe 2 Benja, you would have made a top 4. I'm just kidding. But yeah, both Zach and I did lose our top 8 match, which is unfortunate. But pretty cool to see you kind of pick up a deck the night before from a YouTube channel and then see results with it, dude. And I was pretty confident in us both and how well we were gonna do. Luckily, we didn't play each other, which was good. I ended up going 4-0, and then like you said, they let us draw at the end, so that's what kind of secured me into top 8. But I lost the the round in the top 8. Yeah, overall, Amber Steel Song taking a different approach now, being able to play stuff with Gaston and Tiana. Like, tell me a little bit about how Tiana, Robin Hood, and Gaston make the deck different.
I had just taken what was said in the video to heart, and Tiana was a character that was just going to be able to have a decent stat line like all the other 1/3s. However, in this deck, it being able to pair off with Let the Storm Rage On can clean up some early characters. Not to mention that it can be sung with Ballroom Sensation Cinderella. You can get ahead really early on the board. And the 1-drops are really good later on to really get your Surfer Stitch to go off too if you're lacking your tempo. And of course 4 of Tragic Hero Beast. I honestly wish I did play more Rapunzels than I did. 2 seemed a little bit lackluster. I would have liked to have played like 3, maybe even 4. And yes, I should have played more Benja. But I went with what was, effective, good, and just created by the original creator of the deck. Without any testing, I felt like it was, I was comfortable going in with the strategy since I knew the deck in and out.
Yeah, I'll talk a little bit about my experience when we get to my deck. But overall, do you like the tournament? Do you like the way the deck performed? How you performed? Well, how do you feel about competitive Lorcana?
It was really fun and exciting. I played against a few people that definitely like play as well and aren't new to the game. I had to play against a mirror match round 5 to secure my way into top 8. That was the last round that I played in Swiss before I drew. And I had to play against an Emerald Steel discard round 2, which I feel like has a really bad matchup against me, and is overall why I felt very confident with this list, is I felt like there was going to be a lot of Emerald Steel discard decks, and there was one that made the top 8. The overall tournament was really good. I like how it was ran, and from I know of how the tournaments are played out with the end of match procedure. I feel like they followed with what I believe to be the standard, which is if you don't finish the game, it ends in a draw.
Which is a something we all got to get used to, because that's the official end of match procedure. And I know a lot of people complained about that, but I will share my opinions on time, the end of match procedure, in a bit. But let's go ahead and check over some of these other top 8 lists, because we do have a variety of Ruby Amber, like you mentioned, in this top 8. 2 in the top 8. One of these by Chris Neal had a very good record throughout the day too. I was supposed to play him last round, but we ended up taking that a draw, like we said. A lot of the Ruby Amber decks are basically running playing very similar to the way we've been seeing them in the last couple videos, with some of them running either 3 to 2 Lantern and Teeth, and like a couple copies of Teeth and Ambitions being the only non-character cards in the deck. So it is like a character mash deck. Mufasa mash is how I like to picture it, and the deck is really good on tempo. Pretty much every turn they're gonna have a character to play, and that just gives so much pressure, eventually creating this kind of game state where even on like earlier turns, like turn 4, they'll play Lantern Dock, and then they'll combo Mother Gothel and Rapunzel in the same turn. So they're playing a lot of characters on board and drawing cards, just gaining a lot of tempo. The deck is really good. Unfortunately, sometimes I feel like it does rely a little bit on that Mufasa top hit a little bit, and if you are playing Ruby Amethyst, it is a lot easier to play around this deck. Most of the time you can clear the Mufasa with some of your characters, and then whatever character comes out on top, you can just clear it with Maui and sometimes even a Fox. Mufasa hitting Mufasa is a very interesting interaction. Seeing stuff like Hades, Maleficent Dragon, even Server Stitch is always nice off Mufasa. When I did play against this deck in that tournament though, when I cleared the Mufasa, every time I was ready for it, like I had cards to out what was going to come out, but usually it was like a Stitch, a Queen Goons, a Snow White, you know, a small one. So I really wasn't tripping. That does happen, unfortunately. We do have another Ruby Amber in this top 8 by Ethan Perez. Shout out this dude. I had to play him in the tournament as well. I think I played him in round 3 or 4, and I beat him, and then he ended up being in top 8 too, which was really cool to see. And he was like, hey, thanks for the tiebreakers. You know, and then that was really cool. Shout out you, he recognized the channel. He even hit me up on Twitter to send me his tournament report. He put, here's the deck I was playing, except I was only playing 3 Minnie Mouse Surfer. He basically put the tournament went well. He played 1 Steel Song and against 5 Ruby Amethyst players, one of them being me. So this guy had to defeat 5 different Ruby Amethyst players to secure his spot in top 8. And if you know, if you don't want to play Ruby Amethyst and you want to play a deck that can beat Ruby Amethyst, this might be the deck for you, right? So he said the matchup was obviously very tough, especially when your opponent plays around Rapunzel, which is something that I've just learned to do since last format. You always got to play around Rapunzel the moment you see an Amber card, and that is really how you play around this deck. And sometimes you can't. Sometimes you have to just sacrifice the idea that they're gonna get draw power in order for you to secure tempo. Because if you let them get too much tempo over you, the game's over. You know what I mean? The game they finish the game really quick. So the key combo to this deck is managing to pull off Mother Gothel plus Rapunzel. He says, especially in the mirror match and in the Ruby Amethyst matchup. Otherwise, you'll probably get outvalued. He also mentioned that overall the tournament was good. He played the mirror in top 8. He mulliganed 7 cards for both times, but he couldn't find Rapunzel and Gothel combo aggressively enough. So unfortunately, he says that might have lost him his matchups. But he might consider making some changes by removing the Snow White and playing Hades instead, he says, because of the instant pickup that you get with Hades being able to grab back Mufasa and Rapunzel. And he even wished me a good game again and said that the tournament was one of the toughest ones in general. He even said I was a tough opponent, so I do appreciate you, Ethan, for giving me such nice compliments. And he knew what he was doing too, man. You know, it wasn't one of those situations where I think he messed up or anything. I just think that both of us were playing to the best of our ability, you know, and he had some spicy text in here like the evasive Goofies and Pongos. So when I would play my mini surfers, there was one time where I was met with a Goofy and I was like, oh my goodness, I invested in double mini not thinking he would have an out, you know, and then he's played a Goofy and I was like, wow, I can't even quest with my mini anymore. So you know, that's an interesting tech I do want to mention about the Ruby Amber deck. And then there's one Ruby Amber deck that ended up in top 4. This guy was undefeated in Swiss. There was 3 of us undefeated in Swiss, and so naturally one of them had to play it out, and he was the one that had to play, and he still remained undefeated with this deck. So he ended up in top 4. So shout out to Liam Schramm for playing Ruby Amber as well. This list looking very similar, you know. This list is not playing Teeth and Ambitions. Some people play Teeth and Ambitions because it helps you trigger the Rapunzel when you need it, you know. But this list is not playing Hades either. It's only playing the 3 Lantern. Instead of Hades, it's looking like we're seeing some copies of Minnie Mouse Surfer, maybe Queen of Hearts, you know. Overall, how do you feel about the Ruby Amber deck, Zach Stone?
You know, this deck definitely performed very well, and I remember we were talking about it last time that if this deck dodged a lot of hyper aggro, it would probably take a tournament. And what do you know? I remember asking somebody, I think it was Chris, he did say that didn't play a single hyper aggro, and I don't think we saw any. It's a lot of matchup dependency because there is some matchups that are just completely rock paper scissors that you can't do anything against. and that being one of them. Steel beats that deck, so I think a lot of steel being in the meta will keep the hyper aggro in check. However, if this deck does seem to be under the radar, it can definitely take a tournament by storm, because not everyone is prepared for the ruby and amethyst, ruby and amber combinations.
Yeah, I think if you aren't keeping up with like the Pixelborn meta and these YouTube videos and the social media feeds, you're gonna be at a disadvantage when you play against this color combination and you're not used to it. But that's what we're here for with these meta reviews, so that we can give you an understanding of what these decks do. You know what I mean? And sometimes you just got to be able to outpace them. Sometimes you just got to get lucky and go first. You know what I mean? But I do feel like there are great ways to play around these strategies. Even the discard strategy, which has become super popular. We have one of them in our top 4. This was piloted by Shane. I forget Shane's last name, but oh my goodness, Shane was a menace. he was the only person in top 8 that voted to keep playing on, so we had to play out our top 8, and he won his top 8 match. And when they were done with top 4, he even said, "I want to play out top 4, but I know you guys want to go home." So they ended up splitting. This guy wanted blood. Nobody wanted to pair into this guy all day, and nobody wants to play the discard against the discard deck, for obvious reasons. And this list playing for the following: Tinkerbell, Tiny Tactician, Tinkerbell Giant Fairy, Sudden Chill, Smash, Prince John, Jafar Dreadnought, Improvise, Hypnotize, Sad Boy Beast, Bucky, Donald Duck Gentleman, and Flynn Rider. That's the 2 cost. Then we have 3 of the following: Fire the Cannons, Benja. Then we have a Strength of the Raging Fire as well. Then we have 2 of the following: Grab Your Swords, Flynn Rider, the Shiftable Floodborn. And that is going to be all to round off our deck. What do you think of this deck, man? I know you are a personal fan of the discard engine, and you know how to play it, so.
Well, the list is very close to standard, I would say. The addition of 3 Fire the Cannons definitely wanted to be able to beat any of the Amber Song decks. That was probably the deck he was most scared of going into the tournament. Again, I really feel like this deck is a Ruby Amethyst killer. So by far, something to consider going into this meta, being Ruby Amethyst dominant, is an Emerald Steel deck. And again, there is a lot of checks and balances that the deck has. However, cards like Grab Your Swords, Giant Fairy, Tinkerbell, Smash, and Strength of a Raging Fire are all good ways to get rid of characters that are pretty strong in the mid to late game. Not to mention Jafar being able to see more cards, and the shiftable Flynn Rider being able to close out games when you get rid of their hand.
Yeah, I also just want to touch on what you said. I think Fire the Cannons and Smash are much better in a deck like this as opposed to Let the Storm Rage on. Mainly because of how you kind of explained the field advantage that you kind of start putting on your opponent. Once you start discarding their hand, they start playing cards on the field, and it's Fire the Cannons and Smash are just very fair cards. Like, they deal the damage you need them to deal with without needing any extra conditions or anything like that. And when you're forcing your opponent to play cards on the field and you're responding with Smash and whatnot, I think it's very powerful. I know you said this is very like a standard list, but I strongly feel like a lot of people are still not playing the discard deck like this. A lot of people are they're not playing the Donald Duck, or they're not playing Smash. People are sleeping on those cards, and I think they make a big difference in the results you might see. But the discard deck, very powerful. Like you said, destroys Ruby Amethyst. There was 3 Ruby Amethysts in this top 8, me being one of them. But we'll go over the top 4, which was by Michael Tafoya. He's the homie, plays at our locals, and a really good guy overall. Really got to see that he got good results. I had to play him in top 8, and he beat me game 3. And I feel like my deck just kind of caught up with me. I just kind of bricked. I drew like a bajillion uninkables, and this is his list right here. Very, very simple. Very standard. The only big difference I would point out would be that he's playing the Sorcerer's Spellbook at 2 and Pinocchio at 2, where a lot of people are not playing Pinocchio Talkative Puppet still. Some people are on it, but some people are not. There has been a cutback on Maleficent Monstrous Dragon I've been seeing. A lot of people aren't playing 4 copies of Maleficent Monstrous Dragon anymore. And then the next Ruby Amethyst list was by Scott McCarthy, also in top 4. Zach, this is the person that beat you in top 8, if I'm not mistaken. They were playing double Ursula, which you're probably going to see a lot in Ruby Amethyst decks now. Ursula is like regaining a lot of popularity in the meta. Even the price of Ursula has been gone up a lot, but they were playing 2 copies of Jetsam. Now, Jetsam is a 4 inkable, has 3 strength, 3 willpower, and evasive. He has the second ability that gives your characters named Flotsam, Evasive, but we don't play a Flotsam. We only play Jetsam. And Jetsam is basically there to out the opposing Minnie Mouse Surfer. And look at this. This dude is playing only one Minnie Mouse Surfer. Hate to see it. I'm sorry. I hate the one ofs. I don't see the point. And only one Yzma. But Jetsam there to contest the opposing Minnie Mouse Surfer. I think it's pretty good. He's not playing crabs either, if you notice. It looks like you're kind of relying more on the Jetsam. And then we have my list by Lorcana Goons Kevin. And the only thing I really want to point out, it's kind of simple, Ruby Amethyst, right? I also played Ursula, which in my opinion sucked. My last game against Michael Tafoya, I opened up like 2 Be Prepared, 2 Ursula, and a Tremaine after I mulliganed for like 7 cards. And I was salty, to say the least. So since then, I've decided to drop Ursula. I just don't like it. I understand it, the concept. I just don't like it. Point is, though, this was my list. I ended up opting to play Boone and Donald Duck, as I couldn't find a second Boone. But I played Boone because he rhymes with Goon. And there's really no other reason. I mean, that and the fact that sometimes you just want a 2-drop character on turn 2. If you don't draw a 1-drop plus Snake, you can't really play a 2-drop character. So sometimes I really just wanted that in the deck for that day. I felt pretty comfortable playing Boone and Donald Duck. And it did help. This helped a lot with the pressure against the Ruby Amber matchup that I had, because just being able to play a character on turn 2 against that tempo deck is just really powerful. And in theory, I think it's good against like the discard deck too, because you just want to be able to play cards on the field and quest as much as possible while drawing cards from your rabbits and friends on the other side. But that's really the only reason I played Boone. Everything else seems pretty standard. I just wanted a 2-drop. But that is it for the tier 1 games. The 1K that we were a part of, Zach Stone. How do you feel about your results? I wish we could have, one of us made it to top 4, but it's all right. I think we did pretty good.
I definitely wanted to go further. At least top 4 split. I was playing the top 8 split just due to the fact that I was tired at that time. However, it does feel bad knowing that just one more would have gotten you to triple the amount. But it happens that way. That is the way the cards are. The cards go, and it's not the luck of the draw. Unfortunately, you can't win them all.
Yeah, in general, I think it was an awesome event. I'm very glad I got to be a part of it. I will explain a little bit more in depth with this tournament about like my idea of playing Ruby Amethyst, because this next tournament, hosted by Thea Boyson, was a free 1.1K that was hosted on the Lorcana Play Network. It was a tournament that was ran through Pixelborn, and it was 100% free to enter. And it was a 282-person tournament. It was so many people. But we have the top 8 lists here. We're not going to go over them in too much detail because 7 out of 8 of them are Ruby Amethyst. And it's important to remember that Pixelborn online tournaments, you're probably going to see more Ruby Amethyst overall represented because none of us have to buy the cards. And in general, in a 9-round tournament of Swiss, Ruby Amethyst just feels like the safe pick. You know what I mean? It just and I can attest to that because I went 7-2. I got 10th place. Again, I will stress that I missed top 8 by just a little bit, and I am still a little bit salty. I'm not gonna lie. But one of the things that I did notice was that you just have a much easier time with a deck like this because you're more than likely going to see the cards you need to see when you need to see them. You know what I mean? But I will go over the first place list. This was the winner by Aaron W. Magical Mayhem from this Ruby Amethyst list. As you can see, playing certain cards like Triple Ursula, only 1 copy of Elsa, which I cannot wrap my head around why only 1, right? But we got 2 Fidget and 2 Cusco. I had seen people playing the Amethyst Cusco lately in Ruby Amethyst, which is pretty interesting to see. It's just a floater that lets you play. It's the same reason why I was playing Boone. You want to be able to play a 2-drop character on turn 2 if you don't have something to bounce back with Snake, which is pretty cool. And then Fidget. Fidget is a 3-ink inkable with evasive. That's 3/2. This is another way to be able to out the Surfer Mini. If they play a Surfer Mini and you play a Fidget, oh yeah, your Fidget's gonna start getting value, which is pretty cool. Makes it so that you don't have to rely on drawing Crab plus Mini Surfer to out the opposing Minnie Mouse. And honestly, a lot of the other Ruby Amethyst lists are gonna look very similar to that, minus some of the cards like Fidget. We have No I'm Not Kendall Burdett over here. I had to play him in the tournament. It was really cool as well. His deck looking very standard, but playing 3 Ursula, like I mentioned a little while ago. A lot of people switching to Ursula in the meta right now. And then after that, it just goes Ruby Amethyst, all in top eight. This top four Ruby Amethyst list also playing Elsa and Fidget. It looks like a very similar list to the first place list. So Fidget is maybe something you might want to consider in your Ruby Amethyst deck to contest the opposing Minnie Mouse Surfers, or maybe you want to play Cusco so that you have a little bit more value while you're playing your 2-drop characters. But definitely look out for power cards in the meta like Ursula and Elsa, in replacing the 4 copies of Maleficent Monstrous Dragon, because a lot of people are cutting Maleficent Monstrous Dragon from 4 to like 2 to make room for the Ursulas and whatnot.
Definitely, definitely. Those cards are very much, I would say high risk, high reward, because when they go off, they're amazing. But when they're just stuck in your hand, you're sitting there very very much not knowing what to do. Overall, Kevin, with these two events that you've played back to back weekends, can overall how was the tournament experience, especially for the Pixelborn one?
I'll open up my list real quick. So the Pixelborn one was a much different experience than the in-person 1K, and I played Ruby Amethyst for both. The main reason was because, like I said, it was just a safe bet. I wanted to play a different deck, obviously, in terms of just to be fun with it, but I also wanted to see the results for the 1K we entered, because I think the entry was like $20-$30, and I didn't want to waste that money. So I really wanted to, try with the quote-unquote best deck. And then for the Pixelborn tournament, I had been playing a lot of Pixelborn ladder, and I was kind of stuck on like plat 4 for a while, and I kept going back and forth, like bouncing up and down, and I was getting really frustrated. And then I started playing Arthur in my Ruby Amethyst deck, and then I just went on a big win streak. So I told myself, okay, I'm playing Arthur for sure tomorrow. And I realized really quick that I wanted to play Arthur instead, because of the amount of like anti-meta I was running into that day. A bunch of Steel variants, a bunch of Ruby Amber, and whatnot. And I noticed pretty quick that most of the Steel decks aren't playing Smash. People still aren't playing Smash. You know what I mean? Part of it is probably because the Arthur got cycled out. But even then, people just aren't playing Smash. So you're able to punish them by setting up an Arthur Rabbit play, or Arthur LeFou. You know what I mean? And then against the Ruby Amber matchup, even better. That deck plays no removal. They don't play Be Prepared. They don't play Dragonfire. Their only removal is Lady Tremaine, which you can play around by playing all your 1-drops, or they play like Maleficent Monstrous Dragon, which is a 9-cost character. So they're not gonna get that off on you for a while. So Arthur was really good against those like quote unquote anti-meta decks. And I played. It was a 9-run event. I played 5 mirror matches, actually. It might have been 6 mirror matches. No, I played 5 mirror matches. Yeah, I played 5 mirror matches, 3 Ruby Amber, and 1 Sapphire Steel. So 8. 8 out of the 9 decks I played against that day had Ruby in them. So it was just Ruby all day, bro. You know what I mean? And again, most of these Ruby decks are not playing stuff like Dragonfire. The only removal that Ruby is playing right now is Lady Tremaine, Monstrous Dragon, and Be Prepared sometimes, or Teeth and Ambition. So Arthur was like the little like spicy tech that I had that day that other people weren't really playing yet. A lot of people were playing Ursula, or they were just not playing the Arthur build. And I do want to give a shout out to the Rat who beat me in Swiss. He ended up going first in Swiss, and he beat me because he was playing Arthur's. Any mirror match I had, dude, I felt so comfortable because like I was able to set up Arthur's very aggressively, very much knowing that these were not going to go away. You know what I mean? So I was able to squeeze a lot of the mirror matches out. By utilizing Arthur. And then even when I didn't draw Arthur, you know what I mean, it kind of didn't matter. The deck does what it needs to do. I was playing 2 Pascal and 2 Mini and 4 Olaf because I wanted a little bit more diversity in the 1-drops, especially because I was playing Arthur. I wanted to be able to have a little bit more of an aggressive start, like almost guaranteed, but I didn't want to have like 4 Mini and 4 Olaf. It just didn't seem necessary. And then another thing too, so many people playing Ruby Amber right now. Pascal is so good against Ruby Amber because they just sits there. It sits there all day, and if they play a Mini Surfer, you obviously don't quest with it. But what ends up happening is when they play a Mini Surfer on you, you have Pascal. They assume that they're oppressing you. But a lot of the times, what you can do is you can bump your Pascal into the Mini Surfer and sing Teeth and finish it off. But one of my favorite plays that happened more than once was they would quest with Mini Surfer, and then I would play a Merlin Crab, and now the Pascal can contest the Mini Surfer, and that's really cool because your 1-drop is clearing their 3-drop. So that happened a lot actually. And I think it's important to kind of prepare for certain things like that, like the mirror match in a format like this, because I was going into a Pixelborn tournament, so I knew I was going to run into a bunch of mirror matches. So I like Pascal in the mirror match for that reason. I like Arthur and LeFou in the mirror match for that reason, because I was able to be pretty aggressive. And it was unfortunate that my second loss was to somebody who ended up going X3, killing my tiebreakers and kicking me out of that spot. But overall, I feel like I had good results and a good run for both tournaments. I got a pretty big understanding of what the format is like right now, and basically, like you said, how polarizing it can be to either play Ruby Amethyst or not play that deck. You know what I mean? A lot of times, some of the games I played that day felt free. I know it's kind of mean to say, but like, yeah, sometimes you really just play the one cost on turn one, the two cost on turn two, and the three on three, the four, and you just keep going up until turn 10 and you win. Sometimes the deck really does play itself. It can be autopilot noob, I will admit, but there were some like pretty spicy plays that I felt pretty like, you know, pretty confident in which I was doing. I had a amazing time playing a Pixelborn tournament from my room. This is the first online tournament that I've ever really played for any card game, so I was a little apprehensive about like, oh, how am I gonna know who my matchup is or my pairings or anything like that. And another thing I want to say is I do want to give a big thank you and shout out to all the people who recognized Lorcana goons during the tournament. I had people kind of messaging me saying, hey, I saw it on somebody's stream, or I some people in the discords, or even my opponents, when I would queue into them, they'd be like, I love your channel, by the way, and I'm like, hey, thank you. You know what I mean? So I appreciate you guys for, you know, saying what's up throughout this online tournament. A very fun experience. But if there is one thing I do want to take away from it, is that I need to be a better loser. After my first loss, I wasn't mad that I lost necessarily. I was kind of just mad at the fact that I didn't get to go first, because I felt like I probably could have won maybe and been undefeated in that next round. But I don't know, I think I was salty, I think I was tilted, and then like the next round was kind of a blur, and I lost that round too. So I went from 5-0 to 7-2, and like, who knows, maybe if I would have lost the later match, you know, I would have been in top 8. And one of the things that was kind of bugging me, and I do want to give a shout out to Pay No Heat, because I was in our Discord kind of venting and saying like, I'm so salty I didn't make top 8. And then Pay No Heat, he replied, and he was like, hey man, don't let it get you down any more than it is already getting you down, because it could affect the way you play your next tournament. And he's 100% right. He's 100% right. If I spend too much time crying about my loss or worrying about the fact that I went X2, I'm gonna remember this the next time we go to a 1K, and I'm gonna get nervous and I'm gonna choke. And I'll admit, I get super duper nervous when I'm playing card games, bro. I was like in my room pacing around during my match, like you know, which is kind of fun because you can't do that when you're playing in real life. You know what I mean? Like over here, I'm on my computer and I'm like, come on, show me what you got, show me to be prepared. And you know, in real life, you have to keep very collected and when you're playing across the table from somebody, and that itself is like a whole nother learning experience, is learning how to control your emotions when you're winning and when you're losing. And it's something that I've always had to work on in TCGs. I'm kind of rambling now, but that is something I've always needed to work on in TCGs, is knowing how to feel better about losing. You know, so that is my takeaway from both these tournaments.
I always tell people you have to learn how to lose gracefully, because losing is a part of the game, and you know there's winners and losers in life, and losing gracefully in life is a part of it as well too. You know, that's a 9-round tournament. Even being at a 9-round tournament in person sounds grueling and exhausting. I can imagine what it's like to run a tournament, but you know, from your perspective as a player, how was the tournament ran? Was it good? Did it go smoothly?
Oh heck yeah, dude! Shout out Zach Bivens and all the other judges for the way that was run. Shout out Thea Beastie for even throwing the tournament, and shout out Lorcana Play Network for having a platform to be able to run online Lorcana tournaments that smoothly. Because like I said, I was my first online tournament and I was a little nervous, but I feel like I'm I'm not super tech savvy, you know. Technology makes me like a little nervous sometimes. So I was kind of like stressing out in the morning. But like the moment I finished my round 2, I was like, cool, I know what to do. Like I know which page to refresh, etc., etc. There was a couple things where people were kind of getting lost, and so the chat box wasn't coming out at first, but it wasn't anything too outrageous. And I know that overall the people who were hosting it did everything in their power to make sure it ran correctly. So pretty smooth tournament, man. Second place right here was a blue steel deck. my goons. Check this out. So I want to really talk about the decks that you can play to beat Ruby Amethyst, right? This deck has been seeing a lot of popularity in the meta right now, playing cards like A Whole New World, Sad Boy Beast, and Bell Strange but Special to really secure those win conditions. And then you also have stuff like Cogsworth, Hades, Flavorsham, Tamatoa. This list is pretty cool, in my opinion. I'm not a big fan of this deck. I think this deck is good. I just don't personally like it too much because I feel like if any deck relies on Whole New World, it's this deck. I feel like this deck relies so much on Whole New World. And again, I feel like I've only lost to this deck when they resolve Whole New World. I played against this deck at the 1K in person and I beat it in time. Game 3, they didn't see a single Whole New World. And then I played it in the online tournament. Game 3, they didn't see a single Whole New World. You know what I mean? And it's just like they're so reliant on that card. That's the only reason I'm not a fan of this deck. But an amazing deck. Shout out to the second place player Matthew Piddle for seeing great results with this deck. I know he is a competitive Lorcana player, very popular as well. But yeah, another deck you can play if you want to beat the Ruby Amethyst matchup, right? Zach, how do you feel about Sapphire Steel in the meta right now?
Really quick before I talk about the deck, that name Matthew Peddle, and if it's not this person, and they share the same name as a famous Yu-Gi-Oh player from back in the day with multiple Shonen Jump tops. However, this deck is a interesting. I would say it's an interesting combo deck because it doesn't really, depend on a lot of other win conditions like other decks do. Your main win con is to obviously like take advantage of the board and kind of create like pressure that can't be answered with Cogsworth and Bell. However, it has a lot of utility that a lot of other decks don't have, meaning Popsicle being able to draw cards and heal characters give you a lot of ways to maintaining tempo on the board. And Tamatoa being able to sneak a lot of games in with some, huge quests, make Bell and that card just your late game win conditions. Again, having a lot of removal with the steel class is very, very important, and by far I would say the second best color. You can say Amethyst or Ruby are fighting for the number one, but you wouldn't be able to put the other one at number 2 without considering Steel, because Steel has just so good removal with Tinkerbell, Grab Your Swords, and Smash, and not to mention being able to challenge ready characters with a Shifted Cinderella. I can understand why this deck performs well. It has the utility, it has the cards, and it has the resources to combat the meta, but it will lose if it doesn't see some of its power plays.
Right, yeah, that is how I feel about it too. But I do want to mention this deck is playing Smash. You guys are sleeping on Smash. I'm telling you, Smash is a great card in Steel decks. I mean, maybe not an Amber Steel song because you want to use the songs, right? But in a deck like this, Smash is just perfect, just great. I almost want to say maybe more Let It Go, but who knows? I'm glad they got to second place with a Sapphire Steel deck, because again, it goes to show you don't have to play the most popular deck to see results. You know what I mean? That's pretty interesting. Our next tournament is also can attest to that. We have multiple Amethyst Steel lists in top 8, starting with the top 4 list over here. It's going to be a Bodyguard Bounce deck. So that's kind of interesting. We have a Bodyguard Bounce deck in this top 4 at the Star City Games Con Cincinnati 2K tournament. This deck is actually pretty budget as well. So if you guys know any budget players who want to make a deck to play some competitive tournaments, check this list out. I actually had an aggressive Amethyst Steel list that was very similar to this. Remember, Zach Stone? I was like testing it out for a while at locals. Yeah, this deck playing 4 of the following.
Well, that's because you lost to the guy playing it.
Yeah, exactly. So this deck playing 4 of the following: Pascal, Merlin Rabbit, Merlin Goat, Maleficent Sorceress, Maleficent bidding her time, Madam Imp Snake. We have Arthur at 4, Hercules at 4, Jafar, Mim Fox. We have Pinocchio, Star Attraction, the Huntsman at 4, and the Prince Never Gives Up, as well as Yzma, Scary Beyond Reason. Then we only have 2 of the following: Donald Duck bought with Bodyguard, and Captain Hook. So this deck's pretty awesome. I like this a lot because I was playing like a steel aggro list like this at one point, and turn one you go Maleficent, turn two you quest with Maleficent, you play Snake, turn three you play Hercules or something, or even the Prince Never Gives Up, and then at that point they start protecting your Arthurs and your Pinocchios, and it's a pretty cool deck. I definitely like that. We have a Pinocchio card. Sorry, we have a 2-drop card that's Pinocchio that can quest for 3 in Amethyst. Yeah, and you combo that off with Arthur, which can basically also quest for 3. You're seeing a pretty consistent win condition, in my opinion. And get this deck plays no legendaries, so the highest rarity you have is the 4 Arthur and the 4 Yzma. Always really cool to see budget decks perform well in tournaments. I do want to stress that if you guys do want to play some of these Lorcana events, take some time out of your day to practice online some of these builds. You know what I mean? And then once you've come up with something you think that can contest the Ruby Amethyst or your local meta, do not be afraid to take it to a tournament, because you may see some awesome results like this Ruby Amethyst Bodyguard. This tournament did see a first place. Actually, it was a top 4 split, is what it's looking like. So we don't have to go over all the Ruby Amethyst lists that were in top 8 or top 4, but there were a couple more Amethyst Steel lists in this top 8. Here's another one by Adam Ortiz. This was in the top 8 as well. This Amethyst Steel deck playing cards like Blue Fairy and other Floodborns to help you draw some extra cards. So we have 4 Blue Fairy, Captain Hook, Sad Boy Beast, Friends on the Other Side, Grab Your Swords, Giant Tinkerbell, Tactician Tinkerbell, Yzma Scary Beyond Reason, Maleficent Sorcerers, and a Mim Snake. Then we have 3 of the following: Goat, Jafar Shiftable, Benja, and Elsa, Spirit of Winter. And look at that, Zach, 3 Smash. What am I telling you? Smash is so good this format. And 2 Rabbit to round off that deck. What do you think of this version of Amethyst Steel and even the aggro version of Amethyst Steel?
By far, I am a huge fan of more of a list like this, just because I like going into the late game in Lorcana. I don't like to stop inking after turn 6. So I like to keep going, and characters like Elsa, Giant Fairy Tinkerbell, and Yzma make it all make sense. I'm a huge fan of Yzma also too, being able to just get rid of some of your early 1-drop characters if you see too late, to draw some extra cards. Also working with Blue Fairy to draw an extra card when you play it, I think is very underrated, and I have been seeing a lot of Blue Fairy in Amethyst lists lately.
Mm-hmm.
And just the mechanic of bouncing, the characters back with the Madam Mim Snake. He's not there. There's no Fox in this list, I noticed. So only having Snake as the bounce is a lot. I wouldn't say like bad. Again, I've never played this combination, but I would like to assume that the Fox has some room in the deck list. But when you're playing characters like the Jafars and the Blue Fairies, you might have to make a change and cut something. So that's what got the axe.
That's true. You probably got to make more room for some stuff. I mean, you can always Yzma back your rabbits if you don't want to bounce them back, but Yzma's not the same as bouncing back like an Elsa, for example. But we have another Amethyst Steel list in this 2K from Star City Games Cincinnati. This one is playing Snake and Fox. They have 3 Elsa as well. They're playing 2 Tiana, which is a 1/3 in Steel, which is pretty cool. I think the Tiana in Steel is a very good card, because it's like playing Olaf or Minnie, for example. But they're playing cards like Let the Storm Rage On and Strength of a Raging Fire as well in this Amethyst Steel deck. It's kind of a control deck, but as you can tell, it does play about 6 1-drops, and then it's playing 8 2-drops, and then it keeps on going from 3 to 4 and up, right? And these decks right now seem very reliant on tempo. I think tempo is the name of the game in Lorcana right now. And if you don't know what tempo means, it's what it sounds like. It's like a song. You want to play a 1 cost on turn 1, a 2 cost on turn 2, a 3 cost on turn 3, and you want to keep that rhythm going the whole game, because if you can keep that rhythm going and you went first or even going second, you're more than likely going to be able to control that game. And that's kind of, I think tempo is really important. And you lose tempo when your opponent interrupts your process with certain cards like Smash, for example, or even like when you play a Sad Beast. If you respond to that with a way to damage the Sad Beast, they're interrupting your tempo. So I think that's a very important key term to learn right now in trading card games, especially Lorcana. Especially right now that we have a tournament scene with a bunch of the same deck, Ruby Amethyst, and I do think the way you combat that is by playing certain decks like this that can really get you control the game state while building up your lore and building up your ink. From turn 1 all the way to turn 8. Sorry, when that Elsa comes down. So pretty crazy. And shout out to Star City GamesCon for having two Lorcana tournaments that weekend. They did one on Saturday and they did one on Sunday. So on Sunday they had another 1K, which was a event that had 63 players. And let's look at this Amethyst Steel list, brother. This list looking kind of similar to the one we just looked at. This one's also playing Blue Fairy, though, only playing 2 copies. And it is playing Ursula as well to kind of control the later game. But it's looking like a stun deck, like I said, where you start off playing your 1-drops on turn 1, you keep building up to that. The only 1-drop in this deck, though, is going to be Olaf, and they are only playing 2 Snake and 2 Blue Fairy. So you probably have to decide on what you're going to play on turn 2, unless you're playing a Prince Eric. And Prince Eric's really good because it's going to be able to contest the Olaf and the Mini, and it's also going to be able to contest the Madam Mim Snakes and other stuff against the Ruby Amethyst matchup, right?
Yes, I know Prince Eric just being able to survive grab your swords or teeth and ambitions, of course, is just by far the main reason to play him. He does, however, check cards like Ariel, and being able to trade into those characters against the Amber matchups is also very strong, and also killing and cleaning up dogs.
Oh yeah, you got to be able to clear the dock as well against those pesky Ruby Amber decks. And as you can kind of tell, a lot of these lists, it looks like they're being built to play around Ruby Amethyst. You know what I mean? And by doing so, they're also inadvertently playing around other decks as well, which is pretty cool, because you also have to take into consideration, like, how often are you going to see an anti-meta deck? What does your deck do against the discard deck? And those are all questions that you want to ask yourself when deck building or preparing for a tournament. We have another tournament to go over very briefly. This is going to be the 2K from CM Games in Cedar Buff. This was hosted the week that we had our 1K as well. And then shout out to No I'm Not, who he got top 8 at this one, and he got top 8 at the Lorcana Play Network Thea Beastie tournament. So that was pretty cool. Ruby Amethyst as well, getting top 4, most of the top 4 in this tournament. So we are just going to go over the Emerald Steel discard that got top 4 in this tournament. This tournament consisting of 53 players, and this Emerald Steel ran by Kyle Dune. This list playing some interesting cards, like 1 copy of Mouse Armor and 1 copy of Cinderella Stout-Hearted, but they are playing the Bucky John discard combo. We were just talking about how this list isn't super, I guess you would say, generic. Some people are playing some different text than others. This list is only playing 2 Fire the Cannons and stuff like that. But what do you think of a card like Mouse Armor in this deck?
Mouse Armor, I think, is a very underrated card. However, it's hard to kind of justify being able to fit it in this list, knowing the amount of uninkable cards you do play in the discard engine, with characters like Prince John and Flynn Rider, and songs like actions like Grab Your Swords and Fire the Cannons. I do like the addition of the Stout-Hearted Cinderella. I think that this gives a better late game aspect to the Amber Steel matchup. Most of the time, they're not going to keep, or they're going to ink away the world's greatest criminal mind. And I definitely think that this character can prove to be, included in the deck, as well as cards like the Treasure Hero Beast. Being a Floodborn can also just trigger Bucky. There are only playing 2 of the Strength of the Raging Fire. I do like that card at least 3, including at least 3 Smash. They decided on 4 Smash, which is understandable, but you do find yourself in certain scenarios where you are able to, establish a certain amount of characters, and being able to sing Strength of a Raging Fire with Prince John is actually very strong. Knowing that against certain matchups, you cannot lose your Prince John to a rush character. It's definitely worth at least having 3 copies of that card in there. But overall, this list looked very solid. Mouse Armor is just a card that is hard to really justify in this meta right now because it is practically useless against Ruby Amethyst, and that is what is the best deck.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of mouse armor, and I'm not a fan of one ofs. You know what I mean? So I'm just looking at this list and I'm thinking like, man, that one of mouse armor could have been a second Cinderella Stout-Hearted or something. Another thing I noticed is that they're not playing the one drop Flynn Rider, which is kind of interesting because I would have thought you would want to go, turn one Flynn, turn two Bucky, turn three John, turn four Shift Flynn, but it's not looking like that is the play against this deck. Maybe on turn one you just don't want to play a one drop because it doesn't look like there's any one drops in this list. But we have another Emerald Steel list in this tournament that was in top 8. Shout out to Franklin Hajni for this top 8 Emerald Steel discard list. This one is playing the one drop Flynn, playing 4 of those. This list looks a little bit more consistent in my opinion, playing a bunch of 4 ofs and then the 2 Donald Duck. I noticed that a lot of people aren't playing Daisy Duck anymore, but this list is playing 4 Daisy Duck as well. But no Strength of a Raging Fire, only 4 Smash and 4 Fire the Cannons. But hey, like I said, guys, it's good to see the top decks kind of playing Smash now because I feel like people were just not playing that card, and it's so good.
That card is, again, one of the cards that just answers a lot of strong plays like Aerial Singer and Doc. I am not a fan of Daisy Duck because of cards like Smash. Most of the time, Daisy Duck just gets one discard off before she's killed. It sounds better if there was cards like the Prince and maybe some bodyguards to go along with it. I'm just not a fan of Daisy Duck in the discard decks right now. I personally think that there are other cards that are way more valuable, and 4 of should be like Donald Duck before cards like Daisy Duck are included in the list. So there are some changes that I would make to it. However, I'm okay with the 1-3 Flynn. I understand why some lists play it. I understand why some lists don't. A lot of lists don't decide to include it because they, again, want to keep more ink for their plays like Bucky and Prince John, and having to commit a lot of uninkables already is tough. But this list is just playing only 12. So that is a little bit better than other lists. There is no grab your swords in this one.
That is true. There is no grab your swords in this one, sacrificing a little bit of that AoE to kind of keep consistent with maybe the other characters you want to play. This deck is so tilting to play against. I think this deck is really good. I think Prince John is an undervalued card right now in terms of price and in terms of the way people play him. And if you're struggling in this format too against Ruby Amethyst, you know what I mean? This might be the deck for you. But it is still kind of expensive compared to like a Ruby Amethyst deck. I do believe the Ruby Amethyst, being probably one of the best decks of the format, is still one of the cheaper decks of the format. You know what I mean? Beast Tragic Hero just makes the price of all these decks shoot up. You know what I mean? Like an immense amount. But it does give it a reason why, because Beast Tragic Hero is such a great card this format. You need to take into consideration cards like this and color combinations like this when playing the meta. And in all honesty, if you're not going to beat them, you might as well join them. Maybe you want to pick up a discard deck, or maybe even a Ruby Amber deck, because it's looking like Ruby Amber, Emerald Steel discard, and Amethyst Steel are the 3 other color combinations that you might want to try instead of Amber Steel, or even like Ruby Amethyst, or even like Amber Steel Song. You know what I mean in terms of anti-meta. But I like this Ruby Amber list from this top 8 by Derek Smith, playing a card like Ratigan. It's a very similar Ruby Amber list to the ones we were seeing in the beginning of this video, playing 3 Lantern and 2 Teeth and Ambitions as their only non-character cards. But Ratigan's kind of cool because basically when Ratigan comes on the field, you're able to target a character on the opposing side of the board with 3 cost or less, and you're able to exert it, and then you can ready one of your own characters. So if Ratigan comes out off of Mufasa, it comes out exerted, but then if there's a character on the other side of the board, you can make it ready and exert your opponent's character, which is kind of cool.
That is a very cool interaction. I also know that he by far gives a lot of tempo. Being able to exert opposing characters is a very, very good mechanic. A lot of people play around this by just keeping characters readied. We don't see it played as much, but Rockstar Stitch is a good example. A lot of opponents would just choose to keep their character readied in fear of cards like Maui Hero to All. But Radigan can change those plans, and yeah, I like this card, but I can't justify it. This in this meta just because of its high cost and its uninkability. It is cute, but again, it is not what I want to see in as far as cards go. If it was inkable, it'd be very good.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. The fact that it being uninkable makes it a little less fun to play, in my opinion. But we're gonna go over one more list. This was the first place list by Bobby McHugh from the Manticore's Tavern tournament that happened via 20 Lore Pros Discord server. It was a 28-player tournament that finished on January 3rd, and it was an Amethyst Steel control list that took first place. Pretty awesome to see because it's playing Blue Fairy. And I know we're just talking about this. Blue Fairy seeing some come up in the meta play right now because you're able to basically draw cards. If you don't know what Blue Fairy does, we should have mentioned it earlier, but it is a 2-ink character, inkable with 1/1 stat line that basically says whenever you play a Floodborn character, you draw a card. And it has evasive, so evasive characters are rather sticky this format, especially if you don't quest with them. So if you don't quest with Blue Fairy, the only outs to this are going to be Tinkerbell, that's a Storm Rage on, Teeth and Ambitions, but if you're not playing those color combinations, that Blue Fairy is going to stay on the board for a while.
Definitely. I've asked this a few times during the shows where I have a lot of inventory available, and this is a character that is being, I think, kept under the radar by some. They're asking for their foils, and I kind of tell them, oh well, I only have one available, and I just don't know if I want to get rid of multiple at a time. Just because it is a card that is not as like popularized doesn't mean it won't be good later on. And I'm a big believer in cards that say, when a Floodborn character is played, trigger an ability. Those characters can only get better. I'm really hoping to see some early drop characters so you can shift the Beast and shift the Hidden Archer Bell on curve.
Oh, I know that's going to be wild if they give us some 1-drop Beast and some 1-drop Bells, but I know there is some information on cards that are coming out into the Inklands that are going to make shiftables a lot easier. We don't have to talk about it because we don't know anything about these supposed leaks yet, but in general, I'm looking forward to Into the Inklands to kind of spice up the meta because there's so much Ruby Amethyst in all these top deck lists, and I know a lot of us are a little tired of seeing that, and some of us are tired of playing Pixelborn because everyone on Pixelborn is taking themselves so serious and playing Ruby Amethyst. But Into the Inklands is coming soon. We only have about a month or two left before the end of February rolls over, and then we're gonna have locations, we're gonna have new cards to spice up our meta. But until then, Zach Stone, what do we like to say here on Lorcana Goons?
As always, stay tuned to Lorcana Goons.
All right, my goons, thank you so much for watching this week's meta review. My name is Kevin, joined by our host, Zach Stone. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you like this type of content, and we will see you goons next time.